made too many compromises already, too many retreats. They invade our space, and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds, and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
Well, guys, had a dream last night, so I felt like this would be a good way to get what was off my chest. And you're welcome to pay attention to this. You don't have to. Some people will dismiss it, some people will value it. But I just had a leading to do that, so that's what I'm doing. The quote at the beginning of that video, if you're a Star Trek fan, the plot is that there's an evil force which has been going across the universe, and it's almost unstoppable. It's a force called the Borg. They're basically a race of robots who just simply suck up societies, and they try to make deals with it, and they try to make treaties, and it all falls on deaf ears. So finally they have to come to the point where they have to actually stand up and deal with it in a real way. Is that what's going on now? Not yet. And I hope not ever. But there's a few things I wanted to point out that you folks may not have considered. So the drive of my last video, if any of you watched it, was the election which is upcoming. And, you know, there's quite a polarization. The big three are all kind of a version of each other. And of course the PPC is, sorry my cat, the PPC is in a circumstance where it, you know, no vaccinations, no forced vaccinations, no passports, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty polarizing, right? But I want to talk to you about, again, last time I referred to the situation in Australia. How did it happen down there? I'm sure you've seen the footage of the police, you know, the brutality, and you know, people saying, you can't do that, etc., etc. And that's my Aussie accent. And they just proceed, right? You can right well bet that leading up to this, there was compliance tests that were carried off with enforcement and even in the healthcare system to determine what they can get away with. And here's what I mean by that. You farmers, you know, think about your chickens, think about your cows, think about whatever you have. Your chickens and your cows have no idea what's in store for them. When your chickens show up as chicks, they're like, oh, good, a safe place and free food. And they go about their life. And who knows the little politics that go on inside the barn amongst the chickens. But you know what's going to be happening in 6 weeks, right? Or you cattle farmers. Maybe you've got, you know, cows have different personalities and you handle them and you like one or the other, but, and maybe they have their own little cliques and things like that happen depending on whether you have a beef or a dairy farm. But you as the farmer, you know what's happening at the end. What are the odds that this happens everywhere in the world? You know, when you go to the beach, or maybe you're driving and you see the guy on the off-ramp who's, you know, begging for money, and you say to yourself, that guy should get a job. Or you just don't like crowds because you feel like they're impeding upon your space. Whatever. The point is, those feelings that you're having, what are the odds that the guys upstairs have similar feelings about you and the things that are important to you? This just stands to reason. I'm not talking like, you can get all the conspiracy theories that you want, but in India still they have the caste system. They have people on the bottom, people on the top. And because we're all people, and the defining difference between us is abilities and resources, what are the odds that just like your cows or your chickens who have no idea what's going to be happening to them, what are the odds that something's up? Because management is, even our politicians, things like that, even they are being managed. So mandatory vaccinations for nurses and doctors. Folks, the reason this stuff is going on is because the nurses and the doctors represent the last line of defense for the general populace. Clearly in Australia, there was a period of time where either they observed that enough police had been vaccinated, or maybe they did aptitude tests or whatever. The point is, there's a certain kind of person who will just unload on a populace because they feel no camaraderie. They're either psychopathic or they're just quote unquote following orders. And so the reason they're doing mandatory vaccinations in the hospital staff and public sector and the police is these are the compliance tests that they need them to undergo, because they'll be the line that then deals with the rest of the population. And once again, I don't care if you're vaccinated or not. Vaccination is compliance. And it doesn't make you a bad person if you comply. People have been complying since the dawn of time. I mean, let's hop on our time machine back to ancient Israel when they were in Egypt. They didn't turn into slaves overnight, folks. They were, they were Isaac's line for like, they probably were a preferred class for a while. They probably had privileges, and then, there may have been just a situation where, because they were there for generations, like 400 years, that just, over a period of time, things were changed till eventually they become slaves. But hey, there's some people who don't feel like they're slaves and they got 3 hots and a cot. It's all based on perception. And you can right well imagine that when it's time for the Israelites to go, they didn't all go. Some of them just stayed in their cage. That just stands to reason. So going back to what I was saying about compliance with the doctors and the nurses and the police, they're doing that because if they get rid of the ones who won't comply, there's a fresh crop of nurses coming out of nursing school who'll be like, oh, I get a job and all I have to do is get the shot. Okay. And they're not foolish, but they're just young. Wisdom comes with age, right? There's a new crop of doctors. Heck, if they have a big enough problem, they'll import some doctors who are just like, oh, you mean I can come from Botswana, become a doctor in Canada if I take the shot? Okay. That's why. So going back to the election, compliance, guys, compliance. You can comply if you want. You really can. A lot of people have. And you have to ask yourself why you're complying. Of course, you'll on the face of it, you'll say, oh, I complied to keep people safe. But in your heart of hearts, you already know. The math's already in. This thing wasn't going to kill you in the first place. It was just like, oh, everybody's doing it? Oh, okay, I'll do that too. Right? And that's fine. The cool kids wear the same clothes. The cool kids listen to the same music. The cool kids go drinking and cruising. They're the cool kids. But you never woke up one morning and go, I'm so glad I'm so cool because I'm like, wearing the right clothes and I'm driving the right car. I'm so glad. All that happens is you're just looking for something else to be cool about. So forget the coolness and just look at the logic. You people who are in the police force and who are in the medical establishment and government, currently there's the rule of law to hold on to things. And again, the election is part of that. You've got to, folks, think really carefully about the election. This isn't like a financial issue anymore. This is how things come apart on a very large way, because once the judiciary is gone through legislation, then the avalanche is underway, and the reason this stuff is going on right now is multifaceted. There's it's socioeconomic, it's generational, it's the cycles of time, because everything has a season, and this is a season for that. Just it depends whether you're going to have a hard winter or an easy winter, but winter's coming. So I'm probably going to do a few more things like this as observations I've made, but as I said, the reason they're trying to vaccinate the doctors, nurses, public sector, and the police especially, the police and the firemen especially. You can go look at the protest by the firefighters in Alberta. God bless them. They're strong people. And I'm not saying that you police or firefighters who've been vaccinated are not strong, but if you look in your heart of hearts, and this will be something you do on your own, I don't want to hear about it, I'm not making fun of you. You're doing it because you want to be like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. And that's okay. Doing the right thing's okay when you have the framework that doing the right thing makes sense. But the framework is falling apart because at the end of the day, the actual quote unquote sickness, there's Nobel Prize winners who say this is bullshit. Okay? When Nobel Prize winners whose expertise is this area say that it's not good, you must listen to them. That's why they gave them the Nobel Prize. They give these guys the Nobel Prize because they say, hey, you've done the work. You've put in a lifetime of effort, and you've got a body of evidence to show that you're on the game. That's why they hand out the Nobel Prize. But anyway, I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm simply making you aware and making you think, helping you think about the big picture, that if they get the public sector, the police, and the doctors and the nurses, everyone mandatorily vaccinated, that's the linchpin. Why didn't God tell the nation of Israel to just be like, hey, you can just take over Egypt? No. Because he knew they were the same people that when Moses went up the hill would melt down their jewelry, make a calf so they could pray to it. Maybe that's who we are. Maybe he's not telling us to take over the government and things like that, because they know as soon as while we're busy taking the hill, we'll be taking a selfie. And again, I'm not saying these things to make fun of anyone. It's important to be proud of your life. I think that kind of narcissism is valuable, for just wanting to protect the existence you have, but it's a fine line now. And it's a funnel, if you will. So make no mistake, they're looking at the numbers and going, oh, we got 50% vaccinated, or we got 60 or 70, because once they've got all that, I mean, think about Christ. Christ rolled into town on Palm Sunday. Everyone is like, hey, it's Christ. Let's put down some palms. We're so happy, blah, 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 blah. And then a few days later, they were like cheering, let's get rid of the guy in the most painful way possible. Because that's human nature, following the crowd. Now you may hear what I'm saying and just be like, oh, that's just ridiculous. How could that possibly be true? But I'm using these examples because these examples are irrevocable. You can argue them if you like, but when a population goes from like super, super loving someone to like completely hating them the next day, that's a problem. And you can think that, you see the jeering that's going on by Trudeau. Again, 4 years ago, it was like Trudeau was going to like change the world and blah, blah, blah. And now here we are, and they're like, everywhere he goes, he's being called out. But what are the choices? The smooth-haired dude who, like, if you drill down into his policies, are basically, he's like liberal light. And if you look at his body language, he's a weak bitch. That's the bottom line. You put him in the room, you put all the four leaders in a room with a knife, the candidates, like just let's do this old school. We know who's walking out. So go on instinct. Or, sing. I mean, his religion is basically all about keeping women in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant. I'm not saying that to, I'm not slighting the guy, but that's his turban indicates his religion. Look up his religion. There it is. You know, that's all I can say. And it's a religion that also practices some pretty extreme measures for punishment, which I won't go into. You feel free to look them up. They're interesting. The PPC has enough candidates to win this country, and it will require you to go, oh yeah, you know what? That whole vaccine thing, everyone really should. Because, whether you're being vaccinated or whether you're being raped, you're both being injected with something, ladies. My body, my choice. Because if you give up my body, my choice in one area, they will take it in another. They have enough seats to win. But it will, and this isn't a business where you're going to strategically vote, because I swear to Christ, if you look in your heart of hearts, look at the way the PC candidate handles himself. There have been plenty of times in this country when we hated the PCs as well. 10 years after the GST was here and all the auto workers' jobs were eviscerated and went to Mexico. And that's just economics. Folks, what we're talking about now is the look at Australia. You're not seeing it in the mainstream news. You'll have to go on an alternate website like Rumble or BitChute. You won't find it on YouTube, because when they're scrubbing it, what does it tell you? When they're book burning, what does it tell you? I have to be I'm only putting this stuff out here because I could write another pithy thing you may or may not write or read, but you will pay attention to a video. And you can think I'm a crackpot till you're blue in the face. That's not the point. Go back to what I said earlier. Everything that's happening right now is a cycle of time. And you can right well imagine that in Germany pre-Hitler, nice families, nice life, making Mercedes and BMWs and watches and making chocolate. Wonderful. And then they turned into the place that put a whole race of people on the slow roast. How is that even possible, people? The same forces that create that idyllic utopia just described previous to them roasting that race is Palm Sunday. And a few days later, it was the crucifixion because of human nature. Know thyself. Know what you are possible, what is possible to create inside you, and get a hold of yourself and get a hold of your emotions. Because when I was a child, I behaved as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. And it is childish to think that the format of solving this problem via the old methods is going to work when it hasn't worked. How often do people complain about the government bodies, over, it's, as long as I can remember, and I'm sure it's been going on forever. And there may come a time at some point when we get a PPC government that, we might have a problem with that. But it's up to the intelligent people among us to say, hey, did you notice this? Because make no mistake, you're either a fish or you're a dolphin. And the ocean is full of fish. And they all go in the net. And the dolphin swims beside them. You'll notice the dolphin never goes in the net. The dolphin sees the net and he swims around it. Are you a dolphin or are you a fish? Because being a fish is easy until you go in the net. So, there's only a few days left. Does it end here? Because if it doesn't, those of us who are awake are going to have to make some decisions. I'm not talking about violent decisions, because that's not... I'm just talking about decisions about the direction of how you're going to point your life. We always have to make decisions, and I'm not trying to be a apocalyptic, but this is just the cycles. These are the cycles of the world that have been going on since the dawn of time. You just may not have noticed them while you're busy taking selfies and building your McMansion, and going on your next vacation. Those are all lovely pursuits. That's fine. But that lifestyle, we are at 3/4 the way here on Cooking the Frog. That lifestyle is evaporating very, very shortly. And then you're going to have to say to yourself, what the fuck was I fighting for? What the fuck was I alive for? Really? That's what's going to happen. So yeah, a little controversial, but feel free. I got lots of private messages on this stuff, and I appreciate those. Some people enjoying my ideas, some people not, and that's okay. Because as it stands right now, we still currently can share our ideas, currently.